I was, journeying down. Uh, I was, you know, recording a message to a friend who's traveling around and is, for all intents and purposes, checked out of the USA and is probably never ever going back. Well, who knows? He's not that old, but it seems that he's may not ever go back to the U.S. except, perhaps for a visit. I'm not even sure. He views the U.S. as, just a thoroughly malicious criminal place and backward and violent place. But, I was thinking, well, maybe rent a cheap used vehicle from my buddy in Oklahoma and travel around and but I'm also reading or watching on YouTube like various one guy, Hampton Law, he's a prosecutor turned defense attorney, and probably because he saw what a filthy mess. Oh, let me take the pillow down, it'll look nicer perhaps. Okay, yes, there we go. What a filthy mess the American legal system is. And, he advises people kind of as a lead into his legal business, for free on what to do when pigs stop you and they want to violate your, constitutional rights, and how you deal with the pigs, a good primer, basically shut up, don't talk, I do not consent to a search, I demand a lawyer, fuck off, pig. And if the pig cannot perform his harassment, traffic, alleged traffic stop, harassment to see if he can ruin your life in 30 minutes or less, then fuck you, it gets thrown out of court, one would hope. But in Russia, I should note, pigs like that, in the Tsarist era, the peasants just shot them, or they didn't have guns a lot of times, but they might run a pitchfork through them, or string them up, and they killed 17,000 of the bastards. So Russia, I was in a bar, and no one socializes in a bar in Russia. I was in Moscow, and I was just feeling social like a normal human being, or a normal American human being, I guess. And, I was trying to talk to people, and a couple of guys walked by. I'm like, hey, how's it going? Where are you from? Was Dad a hero of the revolution? And, this guy starts saying, oh, you're making fun of me. And, he starts, being friendly, aggressive. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Hey, yeah, sure, I'll have a beer with you. Turns out they're internal security police, and we take photos together. I take photos of them. They take photos of me. They show it to their pig superiors, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, he's related to the MVD, internal security police." But I noticed off to the side there was a Russian old man, and he was eyeballing them like he didn't like them at all, and. I got to chatting with the old man, and he said, oh yeah, I lived in America, I worked as a machinist, I guess basically after the traitors destroyed our country, the Soviet Union, he basically, that was his, lot in life. Where else is he going to go? Maybe Western Europe, I guess, but, in a way, that's even worse than going to the U.S., I guess if you're a Russian. But I noticed, the old man machinist, worker, solid, one of the vanguard of the working class in the Soviet Union, a metal worker, his attitude towards those two pigs was very negative. You could tell, these workers, the solid working class of, what was Tsarist Russia, then it's the Soviet Union even, etc., especially with capitalist pigs, they're like two steps before killing them, and that's the kind of relationship. And during the Soviet period, people would argue with traffic cops, There was none of this. I'm going to take steroids and carry 100 rounds and empty my magazine or three into you if you give me lip, because then the population will beat me to death. In the Soviet Union, there's not being a pig there. Well, there is, but those such people, I think over time they're going to get killed. So in Russia, even, unless they're arresting real violent barbarians like Tajik criminals who stab, other Tajiks or God forbid a Russian, that sort of antisocial American pig behavior is not tolerated like it is in America. There's a kind of reverence for the pigs in America historically that there isn't in Russia, which is all to the good. The other thing is I was in Leuven, Austria, and I get on the bus, and I can't believe it, it's $3 one way. I mean, I'm like, what? That's crazy. $3? And we're in social democratic Austria? Are you kidding me? And, these old bitches, the second time I'm on the bus to go into town, they're just cheerfully like, oh, it's good for an hour. Oh, yeah, that's the way it is. They're just old, petty bourgeois. And speaking of which, there's a Russian artist. He's Jewish, famous. He does satirical memes with kitties. It's very cute, but it has a kind of more instructive side too. And this is very, I guess you could say, post-Soviet in theme. Here we have the cute kitties, and it says "U nas u melko bourgeoisnich." What is it? Gnid, zdrowy son I appetit. And for us, petty bourgeois vermin, health, happiness, and appetite. So, that gives you an idea, and otherwise, this one is the darker side of, Russia, post-Soviet space. Вот здесь они Боренку нашего и сожгли, it looks like. I'll have to translate that later. But, you can see they're kind of like malevolent, what are they, pigs, I guess. Something satire about, pigs cooking pork shashlik or something, like killing your own, maybe, but in the West, you have this kind of, fake happiness, like, oh, isn't life wonderful? I live in Leoben, there's a university here, and then there's a steel plant, down the way, and I can't really breathe that well, but it's the cleanest steel plant in the world, and, there are no more Jews here hardly, because, Grandpa murdered them all and stole all of their belongings, but, we live in the best of all possible worlds, and really, Stalin in the Soviet Union was like Hitler in Nazi Germany, it's all, that's life, so, they're petty bourgeois vermin, but, with a sociopathic happy face, and, that's what, thinking about going back to America, that shit is breaking down, but the sociopathic petty bourgeois vermin in America want to bring it back, want to bring back the 80s or, the 50s, and, anyone who's on the margins of that, well, like communists in America, we were repressed, or feminists even, well, the feminists have their own, sociopathy, that's also the dark side of the liberalism, right? Is, the kind of centrifugal, worldview of, all men are evil, or I am a girl boss, and, I will fuck as many Chads as I want, but all other men are garbage and should be abused. Yeah, that's just, absolutely sociopathic. And, that sort of attitude has made inroads among, nasty bitches, even in the East. So, however, oh, there goes the neighbor. However, what can one say? At least in the East, the peasants, the majority of the population, and the polkabanas, the urban petty bourgeois, they have the basics covered. And, God help you if you take away those basics. There's going to be massive violence if that happens. And I guess, with Steve, Bannon Lenin talking about cuts in entitlements and cuts in defense spending, probably more the former than the latter. There's going to be, he says, a lot of unhappiness. Well, I'd like to see then some of those government officials shot for doing such, to the extent that they're doing this and it's unnecessary, or they're stealing from, widows and orphans and workers to give to these, defense bloodsuckers. The more of these bloodsuckers die and their henchmen die, the better it is. That's historical progress. Unreasonable men, reasonable men adapt to their times in history. Unreasonable men do not. Therefore, all progress depends upon the unreasonable man. Or as Trotsky says, people don't change ideas like the machinist changes a tool. It's only when the wave, the catastrophe is breaking over their heads and their bodies are forced to act that their mind snaps and catches up and radicalizes. It's the exact opposite. The Black Panther said, "Free your mind and your ass will follow." Well, that's liberal bullshit, actually. You're never going to do that, at least not in enough numbers, not massively. So it's going to be, as Trotsky pointed out, you free your ass, and Marx and Lenin, I think also, you free your ass first, or your ass, circumstances, the crisis of capitalism forces your ass to move, and then your mind catches up and says, aha, that's what I was forced to do. And your old view just is smashed into 1,000 pieces, and your new view starts to be formed. A new man is born. And Fidel Castro, there was a nice, quote from him that I shared on Facebook where, he said all of those 27 million, people in the Soviet Union who were murdered, they dreamed of, one can say metaphorically, that those 27 million, including, almost all of my family, they dreamed of a world that was rational, that you could live in like a normal person, that you could relate to your neighbor, as a normal person. But, these filthy, petty bourgeois vermin, vermin, absolutely, that's accurate. These, as Bertolt Brecht said, what will happen to our Sunday trousers? They were more concerned with their petty little possessions and lying and cheating and stealing as small business vermin than, in forming the base of fascism. That's the thing. All of these things had historical material effects, which these coke-snorting, what's her name, the whore, nerd, technocrat filth of New Zealand, or Zelensky, or Starmer, or the other one, Macron, that freak, and whatever their personal attributes are. I mean, if you want to, marry your teacher who's a dude and be in a relationship like that for 40 years, well, whatever, that's odd, but, people have their personal oddities, I suppose. I'm not for regulating people's personal lives, and neither was the Chinese Communist Party, as I learned, through dating a Chinese woman whose, family were in the top echelons of the Chinese society. This was back 40 years ago. But, but when it impacts a society, your freakishness, is used to make you a Manchurian candidate to basically, lie, cheat, murder, and steal a whole society. Then we've got problems, and that's what these coke snorting, Manchurian candidate, scum are, and yeah. So anyway, personally, I might go back to Hitler Freedom Land. Part of me thinks, I'm kind of tired of the goofy, antisocial peasants, of the East, and uh, just drive around Hitler Freedom Land. But Hitler Freedom Land, what do you have? You have pigs that haven't been shot. You have a population that looks up to pigs, part of them. The other population are criminals that need to be, beaten and locked up oftentimes, or, basically kept on a short leash, or, in maybe a better society, they would even be given, constructive work. They would organize themselves, or, the better parts of the working class would organize themselves and then help these more criminal elements. Yeah, I think that's what happened from my reading with the Soviet Republic. They didn't kill every criminal, but if you were being violent and antisocial, yeah, you would get shot, or maybe put in a camp, and you'd work in a labor camp, away from everyone, the normal people. But as far as these happy, shiny, cheerful sociopaths, these liberals, vermin, in a more normal society in the East, they're told to sit down and shut the fuck up. And yeah, I mean, I encountered these ultra liberals in my second hostel here in Belgrade, and this one Russian woman, I thought she was Western Ukrainian. She was kind of like acting weird and paranoid around me, and turns out they're from Moscow, and they left Moscow probably, whatever it was, 2-3 years ago. They hate the Russian government and Putin, and I'm sure, and then, by extension, they hate Russia and the Russian people, because, they want to make Russia into an America, or basically allow the CIA, NED, to destroy, balkanize Russia like they did down here in, former Yugoslavia. So yeah, this what is here is amenable to them in the sense that they like their countries small and broken up and incoherent but liberal, and the workers without rights, basically. So anyway, so will I go back to America in the winter? I don't know. I debate it. I mean, basically, it's shiny, it's happy, it's more social, superficially, but America's got a lot of problems, like especially right now, and it's getting less and less coherent. We'll see. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Bannon, Comrade Bannon, I guess I should call him, is talking about, the coming pain that's, the government is going to inflict upon the masses. And, that's when things will probably get more weird and more violent and more repressive. Yeah. So, that'll be interesting. I mean, from afar, I don't know if I want to be in the middle of that. Yeah, because, I'm not good around pigs and crazy people. Or, yeah, just riffraff, scumbags who want to lie, cheat, and steal. Yeah, I don't, whatever. I don't. It's hard when someone's malicious like that to kind of deal with them, on the spot, second by second. A lot of times, they're just, they act unpredictable, a lot of that is an act, I guess, to like throw you off balance so they can lie, cheat, and steal. But I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, well, I would like to hose them down with pepper spray and beat them. Yeah, that could be good. Have a socially corrective effect, I suppose. Just as long as I, don't have to kill them and go to court. I mean, I don't care if I kill them, but I care if I go to court. Yeah. But anyway, options under capitalism, huh?